Well, each week a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week sounding off on the short session of the Indiana General Assembly, ending with a bang this week. More pothole help is on the way. A lot more stories as well. Our insiders this week are Beck Communications president, Laura Beck. Also, IndianapolisPolitics.org publisher Abdul-Hakim and Access Architecture and Interiors founding partner Drew White. And welcome one and all to the Insiders this week.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. We'll start with the legislative session. The short session wrapped up middle of the week this week. Abdul, you were there.
Middle of the week and middle of the night.
Middle of the night, right. And really ended with some fireworks, right? Describe what happened?
Well, in a nutshell, I mean, they're like college students in the sense that they like to wait till the last day of the last hour, the last minute to get things done, and literally they did.
Right.
And by the time midnight struck, there were about 4 or 5 bills that were still out there that just couldn't get done. These were bills that went to tax credits, things that went to school safety initiatives, and a few other things. Now, some things that a lot of folks weren't crazy about also sort of died on the vine, but it sort of raised the question, Republicans have a supermajority, can they govern, why couldn't they get everything done? Well, first of all, in retrospect, the House got about 95% of what they set out to do. The Senate got about 99% of what they set out to do. So you have to keep this in perspective, and they can still possibly come back for a special session. There are some things that the governor can probably do administratively as well. So it was a late night. People were cranky. They hadn't gone to bed, and so they were just having a bad evening.
Laura, as you look at what got done or didn't get done, your big takeaway.
Those are really good talking points. You did a really good job. I'm very, very proud of you.
That's why I wrote them.
I know. Well, the thing about this session, which was really interesting, is there just seemed like there were a lot of missed opportunities, and especially when you saw how it ended. It sure didn't wrap it up with a bow at the end. And I think anytime you have to come back and say there's things we can do administratively, we can have a special session, particularly after a short session, is not a positive piece to it. Mm-hmm. So there were some missed opportunities, particularly as you look at, I think, the opioid epidemic. I think there was a bit of an expectation going into the session that this would be really one of the key things they would deal with. The other piece as well is some of the high-profile legislative pieces, such as the Firefly, no offense to the grade school kids who wanted to get this designation, as well as eyeball tattooing, Sunday sales. I mean, that's great, but at the same time, we have some real critical issues in the state, and I just don't know how far we got down the road on that.
Yeah, workforce was certainly on the governor's agenda and many others a big issue. 2 bills, I think, did pass. Don't know, varying opinions on how far they went to really address the issue. But Drew, as a business owner, an executive here, as you look at the issue like workforce and like some of the technology-related legislation, mandating computer science classes and the like, why, in your view, is that important?
Well, I think we're having challenges with finding good employees to come to Indianapolis to work for architectural practices. We're all calling each other as firms, asking about candidates. I think the other thing that is very important to all of us, we're designing smarter buildings. We need employees to work on those kinds of projects, and we need the construction industry to be able to build those kind of projects. So I think the workplace initiatives are important. We have to continue to be better at it, though.
Yeah. Laura, in workforce, do you think it's such a big issue?
It is a big issue, and it's something we've been talking about for a long, long time. I mean, this spans back several governors. And so it just seems like we can't seem to really figure out what to do. And at the same time, we're losing out on it. And when you have Republican legislators on one side, the chamber and the manufacturers on another, that really should be a group that is really working cohesively. So I think we've got a ways to go.
One other issue that didn't get through, Abdul, probably shouldn't turn to you on this. You're a cigar aficionado. Raising the smoking age to 21, and that was a priority issue for the state's largest business advocacy group, the state chamber. They feel strongly that these health issues are hurting the state. That didn't go through. The Farm Bureau, never mind. But some of the folks who opposed that, there were a lot of people who thought it was going to happen. Raising the age to 21, it didn't happen.
Part of it is sort of that either somebody's 18 years old, if they can get a credit card, they can get married, they can join the military, die for their country, they should be able to go buy a pack of cigarettes at 18 years old. One of the things that the speaker did say he would look at was issues of regarding smoking. When State Representative Charlie Brown sort of retired, that said she had been a big advocate for some of these anti-smoking, anti-tobacco measures. They would have a study committee look at raising the age, look at raising the tax, see what the impact would be, on that particular issue. Now, my libertarian streak in me says, hey, if somebody's an adult, they're an adult, and we treat them like an adult, they can make adult decisions. I think the better way to do it is public information campaigns to reduce, people engaged in tobacco cessation, as long as you leave my cigars alone.
Laura, do you think the chamber said they're going to continue to push for this? Other groups obviously will too. Do you think it ultimately?
I think we have to. I think we have to, especially when we start looking at the public health cost of this, and the fact that Indiana is one of the top states for death by cancer and heart attack and diabetes. I think that we really have to move in this direction, because it is such an important quality of life issue, but it's also a major economic drain.
We're involved in lots of health and wellness projects across the state, and if you look at smoking, it's one of the biggest causes for a total health bad experience. So I think it's important we raise the age.
Do you sense, as you look around the state, that there's an acceptance of this health being a big issue and a business issue?
Yes. Again, we did some work for Cummins on a new Live Well Center in Columbus, Indiana, and one of the things they're trying to do is have this total approach to your wellness, and I think smoking leads to some of the problems that we have. Yeah.
Shifting gears, as we look around the state, first of all, the state's unemployment rate ticked lower again to 3.3% in January, and if you look outside of central Indiana, communities like Kokomo, East Central Indiana is touting some jobs numbers. Drew, I'll start with you. Do you see Kokomo, for example, Greg Goodnight, the mayor there, and some others, they have some initiatives going on focused on quality of life, quality of place, and trying to keep people there and attract people there. You see that as gaining momentum?
We've done some work for Mayor Goodnight. He wants to bring the downtown alive again. We've worked on a mixed-use project for him. We've worked on public safety projects for him. I think they're trying to follow a little bit of the Carmel and Fisher's model in terms of creating new energy, walkable communities, building real communities in their downtowns.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of these cities, such as Kokomo, Fort Wayne, Muncie, South Bend, they're really on the rise. And the fact that the regional economic development partnerships are doing so well and are making an impact too really speaks to that importance of collaboration and cooperation. And I think that the cities, what you're finding too in a place like Kokomo or in a Fort Wayne or even a South Bend, is they really are finding unique and creative partnerships. And they're thinking outside of the box, particularly when it comes to attracting young residents, capitalizing on their strengths. I think you're seeing a lot of that moving in the right direction.
And just to think about this for a moment, 10, 12 years ago, this whole concept of regionalism would have been basically a four-letter word.
Yeah.
Your former boss, Barsh Peterson, and we were talking before we went on the air today, talked about working with, Hamilton and Hancock County. People were like, oh, no, back off. Now there's no way you could imagine any of them. Amazon would not be possible to be in the running had we all not been working together.
Speaking of working together and working in particular in Marion County, the pothole issue has certainly been a big one. And in fairness, tough winter, the freezing temps and the warm and all the various things that go into that. Some new funding, emergency funding, if you will, coming into play from the City County Council, $14.5 million for pothole repairs. How's this whole thing, in your view, Abdul, been handled?
Here's you got a problem when people who normally don't talk about politics ask me about politics and what's wrong with the mayor and what's wrong with these potholes. If you're talking to like a server at a restaurant or somebody at the grocery store, I mean, these are the things, these are those bread and butter issues, that people pay attention to. Now, with all due fairness to the mayor and his people, we have had, one day it's 50 degrees, other day it's 50 below, but still, this is what you got elected for. This is basic blocking and tackling. This is what you do, and you take the credit or the blame for it, because guess what? You're in charge. You guys have had it for 3 years. You own it. Fix it.
All right, we've got to shift gears. We have 2 minutes left. We get outside of Indianapolis. The USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, awarded $276 million in loans to support electric infrastructure in rural communities. Got a chunk of that, $74 million in Jackson County. Rural broadband is a huge issue.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And we've talked about those reports before about how there are parts in this state where you still cannot access the internet. And as we're moving to more of a web-based learning module for anyone who wants to advance their education, get more training in the workforce area, or even high school, we have to have that. So this is really important to move this forward.
This weekend, the Children's Museum debuts $35 million Riley Children's Health Sports Legends Experience. Drew, you have some various opinions on that.
I'm excited about it. I'm a longtime Children's Museum visitor with our 15-year-old son, and I think that this is providing sort of an exercise approach to visiting the museum. And I also think that it's going to be be approached by all kinds of different types of children. So it's exciting.
The museums here really doing different things to keep vibrant.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you all, one and all. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Laura Beck, and Drew White for a great edition of The Insiders, and we'll be right back after this.
Thanks.